There are some early indications about how rough this campaign may get. Mitt Romney may have nipped one proposed ad offensive in the bud by rejecting an idea to revive the controversy over the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, President Obama's former pastor. Let's discuss what's going on in this race for the White House. The Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Pribus is joining us now. Reince, thanks very much for coming in.
Good afternoon, Wolf.
When you saw that New York Times story, I was thinking about you, suggesting that it's time to revive the Reverend Jeremiah Wright and throw him in this super PAC. What went through your mind when you read that story in the New York Times?
Well, I mean, not a whole lot, to tell you the truth, Wolf. It's not something that we're planning on doing here at the RNC, and obviously we don't have any control over these super PACs, but I agree with Governor Romney's assessment on the whole situation there, and I don't know how much of it was truly in emotion or wasn't, but the fact of the matter is that's not a place that we want to go. We want to talk about this president's record, which has been atrocious, and the president doesn't want to talk about his record, and that's because it's a lousy record. And so our focus is going to be hold this president accountable to the words that came out of his mouth, the promises that he made, and if we do that and show the American people where we're at in this country, boy, we're feeling pretty good right now, and I think we're going to feel even better in November. Will
you urge your fellow Republicans out there, including some who support these super PACs that can raise unlimited sums of money to come up with ads, to stay away from reviving some of those nasty allegations like the Reverend Wright allegations and obviously the whole birther movement?
Well, listen, you don't hear those things coming out of our mouths here, and obviously if that's a tell to others, that's what it is. So I want to talk about the economy, I want to talk about jobs, and I want to talk about this president's failures in fulfilling the promises that he made. I mean, look, this president's in love with the man in the mirror and what comes out of his mouth, but what he's not in love with is following through for the American people. We know that. People can't put a full tank of gas in the car. They're not buying groceries the way they ought to. People aren't making what they should. And I've got a feeling, I've just got a hunch, that the president has a whole lot to do with that, and people hold the CEO and the man in charge of this country accountable. And look, Stephanie Cutter said in a video that was released today from last week that, you know, the economy is a challenge. And that's why the president doesn't want to talk about it.
All right, but you heard Mitt Romney yesterday. I want to move on. He repudiated that Reverend Wright suggestion, reviving him. I'm not hearing you say you're going to urge, you're going to tell your fellow Republicans, don't do it. You're not going to do it, obviously. The RNC is not going to do it. But I'm not hearing you say they shouldn't do it.
Well, what I am telling you is I'm in full agreement with Mitt Romney. I think it's a bad idea. I don't think it's something that this group ought to do. I mean, it sounds like now they're not going to do it. I don't know what they're up to or what they're not, but I support Governor Romney's position on this. We repudiate it as well. I'm in agreement with everything that he said.
When you say the president's in love with the man in the mirror, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, this is a president who was a community organizer, a state senator, and a U.S. senator for 2 years, never really ran a business in his life, but yet he's somehow trying to make a claim that we're all better off today than we were 3 or 4 years ago, when in reality we all know that there are fewer people by 500,000 employed today than 4 years ago. We've got a president who gives speech after speech after speech, can't point to 2 or 3 things that he's actually accomplished as President of the United States. They haven't passed a budget in 3 years. So I'm interested in what it is that the president has actually done other than give speeches that makes them believe that they deserve another 4 years. So my point is, he's a person in love with the sound of his own voice. He loves giving speeches, but he doesn't love following through on his promises.
The economy, though, take a look at it. It's not great by any means, but there have been millions of jobs that have been created. When he took office, about 700,000 or 800,000 jobs a month were being lost, and there's been a steady jobs increase over these many months. Maybe 100,000 or 200,000 is nowhere where it should be, but it's still a lot better than it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, it's not better. I mean, there's over 560,000 people that are not employed today that were employed 4 years ago. And if we had the same rate of people that were actually looking for work, Wolf, in the marketplace, we'd be at over 10.5% unemployment. I mean, he's going to say he's going to cut the deficit in half by the end of his first term. I mean, if there was ever a joke for a promise that it wasn't even attempted to be followed through on, it's that. Now, I know that's a little bit further off than the job issue, but I think Americans are starting to look across the Atlantic Ocean and saying, you know what? If we don't get serious about spending and these debts and deficit, just basic economics in America, we're going to become one of these European countries. And, you know, Europe doesn't work in Europe, and it certainly isn't working in the White House, so I think that we need to fire Barack Obama to start saving this country.
He seems to be working, though, for big business. When you take a look at Wall Street, they've done great over these past 3.5 years. The low point of the Dow Jones was about 6,500. It's now over 12,000. It was already over 13,000. How do you explain the bonanza that big business is going through right now?
Well, but I think that what's going on in the marketplace is certainly a bet that, you know, some of these companies that people are investing in are doing well, and obviously that's a good thing. We don't want that to not be the case, but I think in the end, even if you were to look at investors and people that are in the marketplace, look, a lot of folks have 401ks like I do. I'm worried about the future. I'm happy that some of my investments are safe, but, you know, a safe investment today doesn't mean it's going to be safe a year or 2 years from now, and that's why we need to get our debt bomb under control. We need to get deficits under control. We need to pass a budget in Washington that starts spending less and starts spending, you know, within our means. This president hasn't done that. So I think, Wolf, that how people feel across this country, you know, I'm from Kenosha, Wisconsin, they feel uneasy about where we are in this country, and certainly by the president's own standard, that if I don't have this economy, and if you're not better off today than you were 3 or 4 years ago, then it's going to be a one-term proposition. I don't think people are feeling better off, Wolf, and unfortunately, this president just hasn't led.
One final question before I let you go, Reince. The Republican Secretary of State of Arizona says he's not yet ready to put Barack Obama's name on the presidential ballot in his state. And he issued a statement referring to the president's birth certificate. This is Ken Bennett in Arizona. He says, first, I have been on the record since 2009 that I believe the president was born in Hawaii. I am not a birther. At the request of a constituent, I asked the state of Hawaii for a verification in lieu of certified copy. We're merely asking them to officially confirm they have the president's birth certificate in their possession and are awaiting their response. What do you think about Ken Bennett's statement?
I don't know, Wolf. I'm not going down this road. I've said from the very beginning I believe the president is an American, and it's a distraction. I think that where we need to be focused in on is the economy and the lousy job this president's done for this country. Hasn't followed through on a single promise. It's time to put someone in the White House that's made a life of making a promise and keeping one, and that's Mitt Romney, someone who actually understands how a business and small business operates so that we can get our country back on track.
Reince Pribus is the chairman of the Republican Party. Reince, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you, Wolf.
Prominent Democrat James Carville says it's time for his party to panic, but the head of the Democratic National Committee, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, told me she needs to, quote, peel James Carville off the ceiling. So what does James's wife and strong Republican Mary Madeline think about all of that? She's standing by live. And is the United States really allowing Raul Castro's daughter to visit the United States?
It's an advance to the Cuban American community in USA, and it's a big offense to all patriots.